Okay, hello everybody. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. How you all doing? Hey Cody, what's happening? So, welcome to my stream, everybody. Hang on one second here. Let me just close my window because the minute I start streaming, some guy outside turns on his leaf blower. I love how that happens. Anyway, so this week we're going to be talking all about the Manosphere. I apologize in advance for subjecting all of you to this, what is going to be a waterfall of terrible, toxic masculinity. But we got to talk about it anyway. Thanks, Cody. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining. So let's just jump right into it. Right? Oh shit! Hang on a second. Okay. All right. Before we do that, here's what we were working on last time. We've got kind of our evil, hideous demon face looking dude so far, and I'm not really sure where this is going, but yeah, I think we'll stick with it for a little while. So we'll just continue on with Mr. Devilhead here, and I don't even know. Maybe we'll color it. Maybe we'll do whatever. So, why am I talking about the Manosphere? Right. Well, first off, what the hell is the Manosphere? Okay. Um, it has roots going back to the well, I guess okay. So the Manosphere is a collection of websites, of you know, blogs, of YouTube channels, social media influencers, things like that. People who I don't like that at all. That looks shitty. Who have this basically idea that men are somehow oppressed, you know, where that society has been plagued with anti-male discrimination, to the point where it's like, um, due to feminism and stuff like that, like that there's this deluge of anti-male discrimination, which is really resulting in the decline of Western civilization. This is really kind of what, in a nutshell, what the manosphere is. And it's made up of lots of different, groups, right? There's not really, I mean, it like any sort of like loosely knit online movement. There's not any clear leader. There's no, manifesto or anything like that. There's no nobody who's really in charge of anything. It's more of sort of like kind of like the alt-right in general, a confluence of like-minded people who just sort of swap, you know, like-minded ideas back and forth, and their ideas just happen to be all about extremely toxic male masculinity and anti-feminism and bigotry and hatred, which results in people getting killed, essentially, right? So who are we talking about? Who the hell are these people? Well, there's lots of different groups that you could, that are associated with the manosphere, right? In particular, you have people like men's rights activists, MRAs, right? And they're sort of like you could say anti-feminists, although not all of them are anti-feminists. There actually are some MRAs which are pro-feminist, believe it or not, but they're sort of like, the needle in the haystack, really, right? The vast majority of them are extremely like um, you know, extremely conservative and tend to spend all of their time complaining about women and feminism in general instead of actually working on the issues and the problems which they say are making men's lives hard or whatever. Instead of actually trying to work on any of these issues, they usually spend all of their time just bitching and moaning about how feminism sucks. Right. You have these another group. They're sort of called Redpillers, right? And they're not really like a group per se. It's more of sort of like a philosophy almost. It's like a mindset, a philosophy, and then um, also like a method of, I guess you would say, behavior, right? They're like sort of like that. That's what like red pill like. That's what it's come kind of become. This sort of like method of behavior in order, like a way to act the way that real men are supposed to act. I guess is a good way to put it. Um, and of course, but originally the term red pill was supposed to mean someone who's uncovered the truth. You know, in this case, the truth about women and relationships and feminism. And you see that term red pill used a lot in just right wing circles in general. So it's sometimes you'll say people say shit like, "Oh, well, I've been red pilled on race," you know, or I've been red pilled on the government, or I've been red pilled on choose, vaccines or something. You know what I mean? Like, and usually what that means is that they've been indoctrinated into far right wing ideology on that subject. That's usually what it means, right? Um, in contrast to that, you have what are called the blue pills, right? Blue pill is sort of like normal people, ordinary, the normies. It's basically another way of saying normie, which is like another term for just, kind of like normal people, the squares, people who are not hip to the super secret info that we have and stuff in this. But in this context, this is where it first started. It first started with in anti-feminist circles, right? Um, so you'll get a lot of you know you get a lot of overlap with these right wing hate groups. They all use this terminology. People like the Proud Boys, people like Nick Fuentes' group America First, and then the Graper Army, right? People on 4chan and shit like that. Like they all use this red pill terminology. They say shit like alpha males and beta males, and you're a cuck, blah 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 blah, right? It's kind of invaded the lexicon of online discourse in general. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say the term cuck, right? Or even based. That's another one. People say based all the time. Based is sort of another way of saying red pilled, you know. And this is where it originally came from. This is where all these terms originally came from. They came from the Manosphere and red pill circles and social media posts and influencers and shit like that, right? Fun fact about the red pill, just this terminology in general, it originally came from the Matrix, right? So if you've ever, the old, I mean, I know they just came out with a sequel to it, which I haven't seen yet. I don't know. I heard it wasn't that good, right? I'll probably see it eventually, but the movie with Keanu Reeves, right? That came out in 1999 about kind of like the Terminator, robot machines taking over the Earth and shit, right? That's where that term, the red pill, came from. And what's really kind of sort of, ironic about that is that you get a lot of anti-trans, like anti-gay and anti-trans bigotry in red pill circles, right? But the Matrix itself is an allegory for the trans experience. The director, Lana Wachowski, is that how you pronounce her name? And it came out as trans in 2016 and is essentially just admitted as much. That's what the Matrix is all about. The Matrix is the story of, it's an allegory for the trans experience, right? You know, uh, Neo has body dysmorphia. If you notice in the opening scenes of the Matrix, where it's the real world and everything's green, it's like shot through a green lens or whatever. Neo's clothes are like big and baggy and they don't fit. That's on purpose, and it's sort of to symbolize the fact that he is not, that he doesn't feel comfortable in his own body, right? The red pill and the blue pill are actually hormone medicines. That's like what they come as, right? They come in red and blue pills. That's where that symbolism comes from, you know. And then you'll even notice, like for example, when it comes to Agent Smith, the bad guy agent, whenever he refers to Neo, he always calls him Mr. Anderson, right? So he's essentially dead naming Neo. And it's through the whole movie, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Anderson, right? And then at the very end, when they're fighting in the subway, and he's like, "You're about to die," and then here comes the train, and then Neo says, "My name is Neo." It's like, bitch, stop dead naming me, right? And they leap up, and he crushes Smith against the ceiling, and Smith gets run over by the train, right? So that's really, really doubly super ironic and funny because this movement of highly offensive toxic masculinity has appropriated this symbolism from a movie which is about really about something that they don't like. It's about something that they are highly bigoted against, because one thing that you definitely see in all of these manosphere circles is they really do not like feminism. They do not like trans people. They do not like gay people at all. Lots and lots of anti-trans, anti-gay bigotry going around in red pill circles for sure. That leads us to another group called the involuntarily celibate incels. We've all had the displeasure of learning who these people are over recent years, mainly because they tend to flip out and go on murder sprees once in a while. That's what really kind of brought inceldom to the national attention was Elliot Rodger. So incels are guys who can't get laid, right? And they are, although they're not always exclusively guys, there are, women who claim to be incels as well, right? And it's true, there are, women out there who are unable to get some loving, right? Um, but it seems to be that the online movements are of incels are overwhelmingly men, and they're overwhelmingly men who tend to blame women for the fact that they can't get any. And inceldom is deserving of its own video in and of itself because there's just so much ridiculous bullshit going on with incels. It's like if you ever go to one of the, I mean, all of the major incel subreddits got shut down, but if you ever go to any of their websites, anything like that, watch their videos, it's like they're speaking a different language. There's so many like weird little fucking terms and all this other shit that it's kind of hard to even understand what the fuck they're talking about. Sometimes like everything has the word cell on the end of it. I'm a curry cell. That's a guy from somebody from India, or I'm a fucking brain cell. That's supposed to be like a really smart incel or whatever. Like everything has the word fucking cell on it. Like you can't understand like half the fucking time what they're talking about. It's ridiculous. But what it really all comes down to, it's basically guys who can't get laid and have sort of like, they just whine and cry about it and have come up with all of these ridiculous theories as to why they can't get laid. And they essentially blame women for the fact that nobody wants to fuck them, which is like, there's nothing more unattractive than being a whiny little toad and complaining. It's like complaining is not going to get you laid, buddy. You gotta go out there and dress nice and lift some weights and be interesting and not be an asshole and actually put yourself out there and go and meet people, shit like that. You're not gonna get laid just staying at home, fucking shit posting on the internet constantly. That's not how the shit works. Anyway, moving on. Um, there's also a small part of the manosphere are pickup artists, right? Although they have tend to diminished in recent years, but they're still around very much. These are the guys that go out and try to bullshit people into thinking that if you just give me $300 or whatever, I will give you the secret seduction techniques in order to, allow you to get into any woman's pants that you want to. Um, just in case any of you guys out there are like, wondering if this shit actually works, I got some bad news for you. It's all complete total bullshit. There is no Konami code that will, that you can like input in real life, which will force every woman out there to just like drop to the ground and instantly start filleting you. There is no secret fucking handshake or like you know, I don't know, magic word or whatever that will just like allow like you to get into the fucking panties of every woman you meet. It's bullshit. These guys are full of shit. Right? You know, and a lot of see, that's the thing is that a lot of the alt-right people they kind of believe this shit. You know, there was that interview that we reviewed with Nick Fuentes. Like he fucking was talking about pickup artists. He like actually believes this shit. You know, of course he's only he's an idiot. Probably fucking. I mean, still it's kind of embarrassing. So yeah, so there this is definitely like an influence and you can count them as part of the manosphere, but it's more of like these are just like scam artists who are just kind of like trying to fucking grift off these people. Right. Um so let's see. You have another group called Mgtow, right? Mgtow is men going their own way. Adversary Fandon, hey, you got rid of your COVID. Great to hear, man. I'm glad to hear that you're okay. Thanks for joining, dude. Appreciate it. So, we have here the next group we're going to talk about MGTOW, men going their own way, right? So, I've made several videos about these guys in the past. I even have like a couple of like answer videos to a few people that I kind of got in little sort of debates with. And the thing with MGTOW is that they're men who basically who claim to say that they're through with women completely and that they want to cut them out of their lives. But in real life, they spend all day bitching and moaning about how they can't get any women to have sex with them. Like, they're like kind of like one step up above like incels almost, except the fact that if they put some effort into it, like, they actually do have relationships once in a while. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not exclusively like depressed about it, but they still have a lot of misogyny. They still blame women for problems that they have specifically, and they still buy into all of the manosphere bullshit, um, citing stupid things about divorce and shit that just isn't true, stuff like that, and essentially just blaming everybody but themselves, right? And that's kind of the main unifying factor behind all of these groups that I just mentioned, incels and MGTOW and red pillars and men's rights activists and all these other fucking like assorted groups of buffoons. The main thing that unites all of these people is the fact that they blame other people for essentially their own shortcomings, right? And the only differences between them is the way they approach it. So all of them usually approach with a lot of anger. If you go to any of these sites, if you go to any of the websites or subreddits, or if you read through any of their literature, one thing that you really find is anger, anger, anger. They're mad at everything. They're mad at, especially at feminism. They blame feminism for essentially every fucking thing that is wrong in the entire world, right? I want to make it look more like that side. So just taking a look. Okay. See, it's a little more noodly over here. It's got to be less noodly. Okay. They blame every fucking problem on the world on, feminism and the fact that women are, getting too much power in society or whatever. And if it was just the way it used to be back in the 1950s or whatever, everything would be great and they would like be married and have children and shit. But it's like, oh, goddamn equal rights and all that, right? Is fucking up and fucking up the country, whatever, right? So that's the first thing. You find that they're all very angry and they all basically believe the same shit. It's just that the men's rights people are angry and they want to do shit legally. They want to change the law in order to affect their as a solution to their anger, right? The incels just want to bitch and moan and complain about how women don't want to fuck them and not do anything to actually you know like help themselves. Right? Like because there are degrees to insuldom as well. There's people who are called the black pill. Those are like black pillars are people who are like, the same shit as red pills, except they're nihilists at the same time, and they think there'll never be any change. And then there's all kinds of. I mean, like I said, we could talk about incels. In fact, I think maybe we might do a stream, just solely about insulted because it's really long and complicated and ridiculous, and we could get a lot of fun material out of it, right? Um, and then as by contrast to that, the fucking MRAs or whatever, like they all kind of have a different approach. They all have a different approach about how they address these things, but they all essentially believe the exact same shit. You know. So, what exactly do these people believe, right? Well, first off, overwhelmingly, they tend to be. Wait, how come my shit isn't scrolling down? Okay, there we go. They all tend to be extremely conservative, right? Universally. And surprisingly, it really wasn't like that so much back when these groups started. So the first sort of modern MRA groups, like there were sort of like men's groups like this going back all the way to the 19th century, right? Um, but the first sort of modern men's like activist type groups sort of emerged in the 80s. They weren't super hyper fucking conservative like they are now, you know. It was very much more based on actual issues back then. Things like divorce being unfair, stuff like that. How women will always get custody of children, that kind of thing. And we'll come to those actual issues in a minute, right? But the modern movement now, especially since the internet came around, has been basically just co-opted by conservatives, right? And that's really what it's become. It's become just an expression of conservative, values, conservative family values, right? And a pushback against third wave feminism. And I wish this asshole in his truck outside would go away. Um, can you guys even hear me? Wait a minute. Am I talking? Holy fuck. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, good. Because I don't have the mic on, but okay. How does it sound, by the way? Does it sound all right? Let me know if it's bad. Because I have like a microphone that I can plug in. So if it doesn't sound good, let me know, and I could put the microphone on. But I mean, it looks like it sounds okay in OBS Studio here. Anyway, but we'll just continue. Let me know if you have trouble hearing me. Is what I want to. What if I want to know, right? So anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, so the modern men's rights movement is actually, you know what? Hang on a second, guys. Just to be safe, I think I am gonna plug in. Let me plug in my microphone here, just to be safe. We'll see. We'll see how it sounds. But if this sounds bad after, I can always just take it out. So here we go. Hang on one second. Just technical difficulties here. Okay, looks like it's still recording. Anyway, yeah, let me know if the sound got weird or if it sounded better before. Whatever. We can continue here, right? So yeah, it's more of nowadays very much an expression of conservative anti-feminist values, right? So they all kind of, what I mean, conservative values like that, they all sort of want that, traditional family, right? Where the man works and the woman stays home and cooks and cleans and blah, blah, blah. And they all believe in traditional gender roles. That's another thing, women are supposed to cook and clean, men are supposed to make the money and come home, and women are supposed to basically just be servants. They're supposed to be subservient and servants to their men at the same time, and especially when it comes to sexual gratification for the man. The women are supposed to put out basically on command and put their needs, especially sexual needs, behind the needs of the man and shit like that. Like that's all one thing that all of these groups believe. I'm the man, I'm in charge. you know Basically patriarchy is what that is, right?
Um, they're all also very, like I said, anti-gay, anti-trans. They believe in traditional gender roles. Women are supposed to, like, young girls and women and stuff are supposed to dress and act a certain way. They're not supposed to have short haircuts, blah, 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 blah. They're supposed to remain, virtuous, and they're supposed to be virgins somehow, but they're also supposed to have sex with you all the time. Like, I don't know how that's supposed to work. Like, how the fuck can you be like a virgin and like, you know, drop your panties on command whenever a guy shows up? I don't know how that works, you know, especially since a lot of the red pill bullshit revolves all around like getting laid and how many women you can score at once and all this other shit. We'll get into that a little bit. So it's sort of like, but they all want like they all want somebody who's perfect and dainty and a virgin and who's never been with any other guy, but at the same time they want to have sex with as many women as possible, and it's like, and I never got that shit. And they slut shame women for women who actually like to, have sex, who have the audacity to like to have sex. They get slut shamed, and it's like, I never understood that shit. It's, if you like having sex and you want women to have sex with you, you would think you would like it when women also like to have sex, because then they would want to have sex with you, right? You think you would want that, but I don't understand how that works. It's like, no, she has to be a virgin. And it's basically like, well, the man gets to have as much sex as he wants. The man gets to do any kind of like, you know, gets to have sex with as many people as he wants, at the same time, he's allowed to have multiple girlfriends, etc., etc. And the woman is exclusive to the man. That's how they want it. Just like it is, like, in the Bible. That's traditional family values and shit. And it's highly, highly hypocritical to me. And also kind of very extremely childish if you think about it. That's sort of like, when I was 16 and shit, that's what I used to think. Right? It's kind of like these guys take like they watch, TV, or they watch like, YouTube or whatever, and they see rap videos, and they see like the guy in the rap video has like 17 fucking women hanging off of him, off of every shoulder and everything, right? And they think that's what real fucking life sounds like. And it's bullshit. So, um anyway, does my audio sound better? I don't know, let me know. So, moving on. It's all fucking load of shit, you know. Um, but they all kind of use the same red pill terminology, right? Let's see. For example, we already explained what red pilled means. It's when you're told the truth about something, and then they'll use that in different contexts. I was red pilled about race. I was red pilled about the Holocaust, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Whatever kind of stupid alt-right bullshit that they're pushing this week. That's what the term red pilled means, right? Same with blue pill and black pill. They all use these terms, uh, you know, a lot, right? You also have something like the word cuck that was originated in the manosphere, which the word cuck really is, to cuck somebody is when, originally what it was supposed to mean is when your wife basically cheats on you, right? With and there's a little bit of racism in there too. It was originally when your wife cheats on you with a black person. That's when you were cucked. That's the original meaning of the word cuck. And it's sort of evolved to like basically whenever you screw somebody over. Now, that's the context that it's been used in. So, let's not forget that it's like, race, like misogyny and racism go hand in hand, you know? That's really like something that we need to keep in mind with all of these movements here. It's they all you'll be racist and misogynist, like it's all together. It's all part of the same mindset. Racism, misogyny, bigotry, right? Anti-Semitism, right? All part of the same mindset, and it needs to be opposed, right? Another one that you hear is, the meme of Chad and Stacy. Any guy out there who's able to actually like have relationships and not have to deal with all of this stupid MRM bullshit is usually called a Chad, right? Then of course you have Giga Chads, who are guys who like, are able to get more women and blah blah blah, right? And then they call women who sleep around, they call them Stacies, Chad and Stacy, right? And you can kind of see the jealousy almost sort of like dripping out, just even from this terminology. Like it kind of sounds like some shit that people in high school like made up, like doesn't it? It's like Chad and Stacy. That's like those are the captain of the football team and the cheerleader that like you're jealous of and shit when you're in high school. Like that's really what that terminology sounds like. But these are like fucking grown men saying this shit, right? Like, although to be fair, a very large number of men, of people in the manosphere, especially when it comes to like the incel things and the red pillar kind of things, a very large number of those people tend to be young, very young, high school to college ages. So it's like, okay, maybe you can't really blame them for the shit they think up sounding like it was made up by children because it probably was. Something else to remember, it's problem is people don't fucking outgrow the shit, and then you got like people in their fucking 30s and 40s and 50s like making YouTube videos about this crap and spreading around hate and bigotry. It's ridiculous, right? Another concept originating from the manosphere is the idea of the alpha male. So that this idea that you have different types of men, first off being the alpha male. You hear this all the time. And what the fuck is an alpha male, right? Well, it's this idea of sort of like the man who's in charge, right? The man who's like above other men, a natural leader, stuff like that. And originally this idea comes from some bad science about wolves. There was some like pseudoscience bullshit that was like popular back in the 80s and shit about how wolves like, breed for life. And then you have like the leader of the wolf pack, the alpha male, and blah 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 blah, right? Which is horseshit, I mean, although this is true, there are plenty of animals out there, animal groups that arrange themselves into troops or prides or whatever. And you do have like, for example, a leader of like say a chimpanzee troop or like the head lion in a lion pride, whatever. Not so much with wolves though. With wolves, that's not really a thing, right? Um, Not really at all. So, but it is true. But another thing you got to remember though is like these are like instinctual cycles, and there's plenty of exceptions to those rules too. There's lion prides that are led by female lions and not male lions, for example. Right? There's all kinds of shit like that. So it's like these are not universal fucking truths about mankind or whatever just because like chimpanzee troops will have a head male, right? That doesn't mean that like human beings organize themselves like that. It's kind of bullshit, you know. But the idea of an alpha male has almost been like mythologized, I guess. Is that how you say that? Mythologized, right? In these to these people, right? And the idea of an alpha male is that he's like just this sort of like unstoppable action hero. Like think about like Rambo, or better would be Shaft, right? Or Dolomite. That's another alpha male, right? Not only is he a badass that can like kick anybody's ass who gets in his way, but he gets all the women. So I guess Shaft would be a better like example of an alpha male in fiction. Nobody understands him but his woman, whatever, John Shaft, right? Um, and it's quite frankly bullshit. It's bullshit, and the way that these people try to like express their alphaness is by spreading around, you know, um, anecdotes and techniques about how to be a complete and total fucking asshole. And that's really what it is. If you ever go and read any of this stuff about, their alpha maleness or whatever, they have what are called field reports, right? These people that go out and like, for example, on Reddit. I think the subreddit got banned, but there used to be a subreddit called the Red Pill, right? And guys would put what are called field reports, and they were just essentially like, essentially bullshit. right? They were tales about how they used their red pill alpha maleness to get laid or whatever. And really, you know, it really did seem like 99% of them were just complete and total horseshit. Like a lot of them would read like the penthouse like letters section, you know? You ever like when you were a kid, like steal one of your dad's nudie mags and then like you read the letters section and it's just erotic stories or whatever. And then, it doesn't take much to realize that, oh, the letters are actually bullshit too. And they're just sort of like made up erotic stories for people to fap to. Right? Like it's kind of like that. Like you look at these field reports and it's just like guys making up shit and talking about how they were like, this is how I got laid with this waitress or whatever because I used my alphaness to hold frame and blah 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 blah. And she was, totally wet when she got out. Her panties were wet and she got on her knees and flayed me and I just met her like 2 hours ago, blah 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 and whatever. And it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Like if you ever read these things. In fact, I've actually got one here for us. Right. They're basically just um they're just like when you were like 15 and bragging to your friends about how you got laid last night. Here's one that I actually really like. Let me go ahead and put it in the chat here. Arya Hope, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. Um, Here's one of the favorite ones that I found. Let me just move this over here and let me turn on my laptop window. Oh, okay, so turn off Keitra. This is a field report that I found, my first one, the red pill style. Okay, I'm not going to read this entire thing, right, because it's long and that'll take up the whole stream. Well, actually, it's not that long. Maybe we could read some of it, but let's kind of go through a typical field report, right? So, context: male, 30 plus, blue beta prior to discovering the red pill in February. So basically, he was a normal person. Right. Whenever they say beta male is like a normal guy. Another way of saying normie is beta male. Since then, I went to the gym, lost 45 kilograms, still high body fat, but really toned down so don't look too fat, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's the story. Was sitting at a coffee shop waiting for my client to show up. We were going to meet a content writer and discuss the way forward on our project. She arrived early, okay, and then this HB2 or 3, right, and there's a picture. That's another thing these guys always tend to do. They always tend to grade women on a scale of 1 to 10 and say she's a 3 or she's a 4 or whatever. Not exactly sure what HB means. I think that means hard body, but I could be wrong. So, over the wall 30ish woman, but damn, that body was wow. So this is another thing when they say over the wall, right? That refers to this idea that what they call it the wall, right? And it's when women start getting old and they start losing their attractiveness, right? They start losing their looks. And the consensus in red pill circles is that the wall is 30, right? Which is stupid as hell. I mean, it's not like, you're 29 and you're super attractive and then you turn 30 and then you're suddenly old and haggish. Right? I don't know where the fuck this comes from. See, it's like shit that children make up. It's like it really literally is like fucking crap that like teenagers come up with. Like, who the fuck thinks 30 is old, for crying out loud? Well, you think 30 is old when you're fucking 16. Right? But anyway, such fucking bullshit, right? They never talk about the men hitting the wall, because men when they get old they look distinguished and all this other shit. Men look great when they get old, blah blah blah. Gray hair looks good, wrinkles look good. Get the fuck out of here. It's dumb as hell, right? Anyway, that body was wild. The previous me would have been going gaga over her arrival. Yes, I know I'm pathetic, but this time not even a smile. Although she smiled on meeting me and tried to chat me up lots. So let's just kind of take this story. Let's pretend this story was true, because there's a 90% chance the story's bullshit. But let's pretend it's true. Woman shows up for a business meeting, right? This is a content writer, right? That he's going to hire for his business, right? So she wants to make a good impression, so she smiles. He doesn't smile at her. Step one, right off the bat, kind of a dick, right? She asked where we would be going next, and I said to a mall nearby, and she asked if I could drop her on the way, and I said, wouldn't cost me extra, sure, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is him holding frame, being stoic. That's another thing. Like, you always have to hold frame and all this other shit. It's fucking stupid. Holding frame basically means, like, not showing emotion of any kind, and then also directing the conversation and being a complete dick when somebody tries to, like, interject any word, right? Like, that's what holding frame is. It's like being a complete asshole to someone so that you kind of, like, use social norms to force them to do the shit that you want to do. That's what holding frame is. Anyway, client came in, and every time she tried to dominate the discussions, I would be an asshole and cut her off and told her exactly what I wanted. Not really a good way to work with somebody, wouldn't you say? I mean, just imagine it was another guy and you always just cut someone off and told them what you wanted, even though every time they tried to talk. Would you work with that person? Moving on. This was new to me as well, since I've always been respectful of women and their need to speak. Unavoidably, she started sulking because I was not giving way on anything. Yeah, sulking to say the least. I'm surprised she didn't get up and fucking leave. Going on. Bit of a baby, or maybe just noticing that women are children due to the Red Pill's principles. We'll get into that in a little bit later. Women are children. The meeting ended with the client thanking us both. She was so incensed. She said, I'm not going with you. I'm calling an Uber. I just shrugged and said, see you later. Previous me would have been dejected and butthurt, and I showed it. So think about that. There's a person that he's working with, right? Who he was a dick to during a business meeting, who is pissed at him, right? So here's the point where I think the story diverts from reality and turns into complete total bullshit. Moving on. She steps out with me, a nod politely stepping towards my car, and she runs behind me and says, you're dropping me. I didn't even say anything. I just walked towards the car, coming. Right there. This is where this turns into fantasy. If there was any truth to this whatsoever at all, this is bullshit. This girl came by herself. She can leave by herself. Now, imagine it was you. Imagine it was you. And let's say that you're a man and there was a very attractive woman who was a complete dick to you during a business meeting with a client. Because that's, you're in front of a client you're trying to impress, and your coworker is a total fucking asshole, putting you down, cutting you off every time you try to talk. Are you going to be nice about that? No, right? I would be pretty fucking pissed off, right? I would be like, I'm not working with this guy. Moving on. In the car, she started telling me exactly how disrespectful and rude I was. Shit test. We'll get into what shit tests are in a minute. Listening to her go on and on, in the mist, I jerked my arm in a direction, which was scary for her. Shut her up. That's how it's written, which was scary for her, shut her up. Thinking he's missing a sentence there. I said, bite me. And she was shocked. What? I said, bite my hand. It'll make you feel better. She's now laughing. See, this is kind of, it's diverged into bullshit. Diverged into bullshit. Right. So now it's getting a little rapey too. It's like she's in the car saying, hey, you're a fucking asshole. You're fucking like rude to me and shit like that. And then he shoves his hand in her face and says, bite me. Now, remember, you're a woman. If you're a woman and you're in a car with a guy and this guy could potentially hurt you, how are you going to react if he just shoves his fucking hand in your face? Right? And is like, bite my hand. So then she goes, that's what you want me to do. You like it. And then feeling my hands, you have really muscular hands. Yeah, okay. This is when it's turned into fantasy. This is obviously, this totally didn't, this is like that happened territory. Yeah, that is sure that happened, right? And continued to massage my hands. This is, I don't know if you can see the very bad grammar and shit here. Me, not even an acknowledgement. I said, I know, pulled my hand back, and instead of resting on my side of the car, I landed on her knee. So now he's feeling her up, right? Which is like, we've definitely entered penthouse fucking letters forum, territory here, because there's no way that this shit could be true. Anyway, blah blah blah, starts massaging her thighs and shit, right? All this other shit, and then it ends with the woman that previously said you were a dick and you were treating me rude, kissing her as they walked out. And this is my favorite part. Her pants were wet. This was our first meeting. So there is absolutely zero chance of this being true, right? But this is your typical field, a typical red pill field study, is what they call it, or field report is what they call it. Filled with just bullshit like that, and then they like try to share with their friends. And so, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? And really, all field reports are just like stroke fests. That's what they are. They're stroke fests so that guys can, you know, post bullshit and get a reaction from their friends. And 99% of it is bullshit. Right? And it's kind of like it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic just to like read that whole thing. And I mean, if you actually believe that shit's true, it's like get the fuck out of here. It's so fucking stupid as hell. Jesus Christ. I don't know. So that's that. Let's see what other kind of horseshit. More terminology. Spinning plates is more terminology. So spinning plates is when a man has multiple girlfriends at the same time. And it kind of comes from that, like, there's like a magic trick where you put plates on sticks. There's like plates on poles or whatever, and you spin them around, and then you see how many of them you can keep spinning at once or whatever. And it's like a magic sort of performance thing. That's where that comes from. So spinning plates. And so when they say, "Oh, I want to plate this woman," something like that, or I'm not sure, should I date her or should I plate her? Like basically, when they say plate somebody, it means just sort of use them as a booty call, keep them on the, keep it on the down low and use them as a booty call and shit like that, and not really have any respect for them and not plan on have any sort of real actual relationship, whatever. And just even that whole concept is still it still sounds like shit teenagers would think up, doesn't it? It really does sound like I said before, like young men who watch rap music videos and think that's how it should really be. Right? Let's see, maybe put some of these little squiggly worm looking things over here. See, I don't want them to be exactly symmetrical, but they should look somewhat like each other, right? Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Let's see. Shit test. That was mentioned in the field report there. What's a shit test? Shit test is basically whenever a man does something selfish, rude, or stupid, and the girl pushes back, right? Or the girl even asks for anything that the man doesn't want to do, that's a shit test. Hey, wash these dishes. Fuck you, I'm not washing the dishes. That's supposedly a shit test, right? That's another thing you'll always see. Like these guys, like, they usually refuse to cook. They refuse to do any sort of like housework, anything like that. Like, there's also like the married red pill. That's another group, married red pill, right? Of guys who are married and they pull all this shit on their wives, and like they'll do shit like they'll flirt with other women right in front of their wives and stuff like that. And these guys always wondered like why they get fucked over when they get divorced all the time, right? Like supposedly the idea is, the married red pill thing is all about making women jealous so that they'll love you more, and all that other stuff. Keeping spice in the relationship by cheating, by letting your wife know that you can get rid of her at any time. That'll make her work harder to keep you or whatever, which is really bullshit. Like what it really is just like, being a total fucking asshole to your wife until she can't take it anymore and leaves your dumb ass, takes half of fucking everything you own. And you deserve it because you spent like, all this time when you should have been paying attention to her flirting with other women right in front of her face. Like, women don't like shit like that. I don't know, man. What the fuck? So moving on. That's yeah, so that's basically what a shit test is. What a shit test is basically whenever a woman asks a man to do something that he doesn't want to do, you know, or whatever, then that's supposedly a shit test. And then, the way to react to a shit test is just to be a complete and total fucking douchebag, and until you get what you want. And that's another thing. It's like a lot, if you read these like field reports or whatever, if you just even read like the posts from these guys, a lot of it just really is acting like a big overgrown man baby until people give you what you want, you know, because it's easier to give you what you want rather than to like bother confronting you about it, right? That's really what a lot of this shit is. A lot of the stupid red pill shit, like even when it comes to interacting with other men, because they'll occasionally post stuff like that about how they interacted with other guys and they came out and this is how I expressed my alphaness in this situation or whatever. And even reading those, like a lot of those are just sort of like the guy's acting like a total fucking douchebag, and the person that they were being a dick to decided not to fight back and decided like the best, because often that's the best course of action, because you don't want to get in. It's not really a good idea to fight with people, like physically or otherwise. It's usually much more efficient just to like get out of the situation. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to like get into fights with people. It's just, who knows? The guy could have a gun or something, right? So that's what it ends up being. A lot of these are just sort of like, oh, I was a total dick to this one guy, and they let me do whatever I fucking wanted. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're a fucking dick, and they wanted to get rid of your ass. What they're not, understanding is that you get out of a relationship what you put in. So if you're a total, and this is not just relationships with the opposite sex, but relationships in general with anybody, right? So if you're a total fucking douchebag to your friends, to your family, to your coworkers, and to random strangers on the street, people are going to be total fucking douchebags back to you. And you're not going to have long-lasting relationships. You won't have good relationships with your coworkers. You won't have good relationships with your family or your friends, right? And it'll be very much, you won't have any close friends, right? Stuff like that. And this is actually a problem, a real problem that a lot of men actually have. A lot of men grow up and then when they become adults, they don't really have close friends. And it's because they spent their whole fucking lives acting like a fucking red pill douchebag. Right? And it's like, well, what the fuck do you expect, man, when you just enforce your will on everybody all the time, and act like a dick until you get what you want? People don't like that. People don't like hanging around that. And that leads to men in these situations not having proper support groups when things go wrong, right? Another problem that these people talk about is how, men tend to be more, men end up becoming homeless more than women and stuff like that. And it's like we'll come to that a little later, but this is part of the reason. Part of the reason is why because you don't have any close friends because you were a dick to all your fucking friends, right? Anyway, moving on. So that's, yeah, we were talking about alpha males. So there are, of course, other types of males as well. There's the beta male, which is like, beta male in red pill terminology is, the cucks, right? The guys who are not alpha, the followers, which in real life, what they are just normal people, you know. The people who have not been red pilled into fucking, the red pill terminology or whatnot, right? Beta males tend to be normal, ordinary guys who usually don't have much of a problem getting women or girlfriends that and sustaining them. They also seem to have little problem maintaining meaningful employment. Essentially, the normies in the red pill universe, those are beta males, and of course since they're usually more successful than their alpha male counterparts in real life, they tend to be made fun of the most. Anybody, beta male is like calling somebody a wimp, wimp or whatever, or a fag or gay or something. It all means the same shit to these people, you know, cuck, right? Another term for that is new male, right? I did an entire video on new males, right? Pony Throat, thanks for joining. I will read a lot of your comments later on. 1911, greater than all. Thanks for joining, man. I'll read all your comments when we get, towards the end of the stream there. So, but I am paying attention. Anyway, so there are all types of other males. There's the Sigma male, which is like the super crazy alpha male, but just like 20 times more alpha, right? Then they also, it's either sigma or lambda or zeta. These are like the step above like your usual alpha male. So they would say somebody like fucking Jeff Bezos or Joe Rogan is a sigma male, right? Like, which once again just kind of goes to show how childish and ridiculous the whole fucking thing is. you know like the sigma male is somebody who's like so alpha that they don't even have to try, and they usually don't even bother trying, and they're just like off in their own little world doing their own thing because they don't care about people and blah blah blah. And it's like it's so like the projection is just so thick. It's like this is obviously how all the kids in high school who are reading this shit picture themselves. Like, oh, I could get girlfriends if I really wanted to. If I really wanted to, Becky would go out with me. You know, if I really wanted to, she would go to the homecoming dance with me or whatever, but I don't really want to. No, I'm a Sigma. Get the fuck out of here. It's so fucking stupid. It's like, you know, but people make millions of dollars off this shit. People like fucking Rolo Tamansi and all these other morons. Like, this is their careers, feeding young kids this horse shit and like fucking up their lives. Right. Um, by contrast, the omega male is like 20 times worse than a beta. So the omega male is like, the nerds, right? The guys who are just not attractive at all, the neats. You ever hear that term, not in employment or training, not in education, employment, or training. That's a neat, right? People that live in their mother's basements and blah 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 blah. Your uh, like stereotypical internet troll kind of guy. That's an omega male, right? And this is where most of these people actually fucking fit on the spectrum themselves, right? This is what they really are. So anyway, surprisingly, not all MRAs are men either. There are women that believe in this baloney, usually called femras, fem MRAs or whatever like that. And these are usually like, women who believe in traditional values. A lot of them happen to be Christians or whatever. These are the people that want to be trad wives. If you ever heard that term, trad wives, traditional wives, stuff like that. These are the women that shame other women for dressing slutty or whatever, stuff like that. People like Abby Shapiro. That's a trad wife. A stay-at-home mom who just stays home and cooks and cleans and whatever, puts her needs of her family and her man above her own, and in real life reads romance novels and dreams about how things could have been. Right? And most likely will divorce her husband at 40 and run away with like a fucking, um, underwear model from Greece or some shit like that. That's really like that's really what a trad wife is, a femra, you know. So, but hey, to each their own. So we also heard in that field test, he mentioned women or children. What does that come from, right? Well, let me open this up here. Let me see here. Let me kind of move that. This is a post on the red pill, right? And let me turn on my monitor again. We won't read this entire thing, but it is important to see where this came from, right? So this is a post on the red pill, which was in 2016, I think, right? And it kind of got viral and went around and has become part of the men's, the Manosphere lexicon, I guess, right? Think of this as one of their founding documents. Like this is like one of their Federalist Papers. If you're a Manosphere guy, women are children. How could we ever see them otherwise? Right. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. Can I just zoom in on this a little? Let's see here. There we go. A little bit easier for you guys to read. Let me go ahead and put this down in the chat also. Let's copy that. Put this down in here. So if you guys want to follow along, right? Women live in the most protected, sheltered lives. They are safe from almost all danger, war, crime, and violence. That's bullshit. Women are not safe from war, crime, and violence. Women are usually in any war um, counted among, high among the civilian casualties. And it's usually worse for women in a war because not only can they be killed, they can also be raped, which happens a lot in war. Like sexual assault, sexual violence is a major problem in war. It always has been, going all the way back to the biblical days of, you know, the Israelites destroying entire towns and taking their the female population as sex slaves. That's been a thing for literally thousands of years. So no, they're not safe from danger, war, crime, and violence. Anyway, they are safe from almost all consequences, receiving fewer, if any, punishments for crimes. That's not necessarily true. There are thousands of women in prison for crimes of all types. However, right, it is true that men receive more harsher sentences for similar crimes, right? There's lots of reasons for that. The main reason being that more men actually commit more crime than women. That is just definitely true. You don't get things like women holding up liquor stores or beating the crap out of each other in front of bars or being involved in organized crime, like shit. Not really, not as much as men. When women tend to go to prison, it's usually for crimes of passion. Woman shoots her boyfriend in the head or whatever because she was cheating on her, shit like that. you know you don't usually get the kind of petty crime, maybe things like breaking and entering, shit like that. Women don't usually do shit like that. They usually get busted, and when they get busted, it's in connection with crimes that they did most of the time with their male partners. It's very rare to get things like female gangbangers. I mean, they exist. And don't get me wrong, but you know, so this idea that women go to prison all the fucking time, right? That's bullshit. Even the most life-altering event, having a child, puts little to no actual burden on a woman. She is free to do as she pleases, completely oblivious to the world around her, makes her comfortable life possible. I don't know where this comes from. Excuse me. Even the most life-altering events, having a child, puts little to no actual burden on a woman. The fuck are you talking about? It's the exact opposite in real life. That there's no proof to this. So just remember, this is just a guy talking out of his ass. But let's continue. This means that they cannot possibly understand the nature of the world and therefore cannot possibly make adult decisions within it. Bullshit, but let's continue. Consider the child who cries, "Everybody has one, why can't I?" He sees his parents as the unlimited source of money. When they cannot buy him something, he sees it as them withholding or punishing him. Why can't he have the newest video game? Why can't he have an iPhone? Why can't he have better food than his mother's bland cooking? Kind of starting to get where this dude's coming from, right? It's like, oh, he's kind of acting like he seems to understand the way children act very well. I wonder why. The child does not understand that his parents work, that they have bills to pay, that he doesn't understand the reality that his parents might be having trouble making ends meet. He has no experience in this world. He cannot fathom the way that money works. He only knows a life where his actions have no bearing on his livelihood. Food is always available to him. He cannot starve. Shelter is always available to him. He cannot freeze to death. Even if he were to shoplift, his worst punishment won't involve jail. He'll get sent to his room, hardly a punishment in the age of technology. I don't know what the age of technology has to do with it. But yeah, this is kind of, children don't understand their consequences for their actions. Of course, he thinks that life isn't fair when he doesn't get a brand new Nintendo. He sees all his friends have one, so it only stands to reason that he should have one. Luckily for us, this phase is something most of us grow out of. We expect this from a child because he has yet to have perspective to allow him to understand his friend's Nintendo was purchased with real money, that his friend's parents had to work extra hard to get, blah, 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 blah. Right? In many ways, women have no such epiphany. How do you figure that? Right? In many ways, women have no such epiphany. Society is structured in such a way that women will never truly understand the hardships of life. They don't have to do the dirty jobs. They don't have to face selective service at 18. They can start a fight and expect others to fight it for them, and others will go to prison for it. All she knows is the protected perspective of a child. Complete and total bullshit. Um, it's not like if you're a woman, you don't have to work. That's bullshit. Okay. No. There are, I mean, see, this is what happens when you believe in things like stereotypes, right? And all that. Like, why how can you even like what rationale would you have to even believe this in the first place? Right? They don't have to do the dirty jobs. Like just that, let's just take that in and of itself. You know, there are millions of women out there who work as housekeepers, who work as, cleaning up garbage, right? Who do things like, I mean, what do you mean by dirty jobs? What, trash man? What, you've never seen a female garbage person before that goes out and hauls garbage? I've seen them. What, there are no women on Earth who clean up garbage for a living, right? What, working in the sewers? Is that something like women just don't work in sewers? I mean, you know, first off, who wants to, right? But I'm sure there's women who do that out there. Like, what about being a nurse, cleaning up people's shit in fucking bedpans and wiping their bodies down when they pee themselves, crap like that. That's a dirty job, wouldn't you say? Right? Being someone who cleans up after children all the time, stuff like that, like a wet nurse or like, babysitting or a nanny, that kind of thing. Your baby shits itself and you gotta like change its diapers. That sounds like a dirty fucking job. Wouldn't you say so? Right? I mean, what do you mean by dirty job? Like just working in filth and muck or whatever, working on a fucking, landfill or something? Or do you mean like what? What else do you mean by dirty job? Like what? I don't know, jizz mopper? Being a janitor, you've never seen a female janitor before, right? Being a housekeeper, cleaning people's houses, scrubbing toilets, crap like that. In fact, you would say that, when it comes to housekeeping, women are like the majority of those workers, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's bullshit. And it's basically, it's the kind of thing that you say when you're fucking 17 and you have no life experience and you think every woman on earth is like, you know, the girls you interact with in school, right? Which is complete bullshit. Here's another thing, they don't have to face selective service at 18. Well, that's true. Women don't get drafted, right? Most countries on Earth, however, don't have a draft anymore. Okay. We in this country, it's like, we don't really have the draft, although you have to register for it in case there is a war. Yeah. There are some countries on Earth where women do get drafted, like, for example, Israel. That's one, you know. But I would counter this, though, by saying that the men out there who are complaining about this are men who don't want women in the military in the first place. That's definitely a true thing. It's like, okay, you're mad that women can't fight in wars. They don't get drafted to fight in wars, but at the same time, you don't want women to be in combat either. That How does that square away? Because that is most definitely a thing that you get from the Manosphere. This idea that women are weak and um, they're weak and and it's like it's the man's role to go off to war and women should be at home raising kids and all that stuff. That actually is an expression of patriarchy. That's actually like a stereotype that women are not capable of being aggressive or that they would be bad in it. And me personally, I've said this before in the past. I think we should allow women in combat. You know, I don't think there should be um, mixed like regiments or squads or whatever. Like, I don't think that would should be a thing. Like, you don't want to have men and women serving in the same like unit or whatnot because you know why? Because there'll be lots of sex going on, and you don't want your soldiers banging each other when they should be out fighting. Right. But I think if any woman wants to be in combat and they should be allowed to do it, they're fucking, it's their choice. They're volunteering for it. Right. And, the counter to that is like a lot of people would say, well, they can get captured and they can get raped and all this other shit. Right. Well, yeah, but men can also be captured and raped as well, you know. And so I don't see how that's any different. Men could get captured, they could be held for ransom, they could be raped. They do get raped, when they get captured, shit like that. That happens all the fucking time. I mean, yeah, and so I guess, I mean, it is a risk, but if you're a soldier, you kind of know what the risks are. So I don't see a problem. I think you should be allowed to do it if you want to do it, and if you can pass the physical um, requirements for it, you should be allowed to do it. The same way that if you wanted to be a firefighter, and if you're female and you want to be a firefighter, then why not? Can you pass the physical requirements? Can you run up 10 flights of stairs holding a 200-pound fire hose? Yes. You should be in. Then bam, you're in. The same way I think they should even allow like mixed sports sometimes. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like I can understand why you don't want to have like, for example, male female MMA or some shit, but even shit like golf is fucking gender segregated. It's like why? Golf, for crying out loud. Like what? Like it's because men are afraid of getting beat by women. That's why. That's why like even like sports that are not like you know, physically intense, like fucking golf or shuffleboard or some shit. Even those are like segregated. It's because, the men don't want to get beat by a girl. Right. So, anyway, moving on here. That's fucking dumb. They can fight a start and expect others to fight it for them. That's not necessarily true either. I mean, here's the thing about that. Your girlfriend gets in a fight and starts getting her ass beat. Are you going to just stand by and let that happen? No, you're going to jump in, right? However, if that becomes a problem, how many times are you going to do that? See, it's a stereotype. This stereotype, and then and others will go to prison for it. That's not true at all. That's bullshit. This is like shit that happens when you're like 17. That's what happens when you're 17 and you're with a girlfriend and your girlfriend gets in a fight with somebody and then you have to step up and fight for. Adults don't do shit like this. I mean, it's bullshit. Anyway, moving on. We won't read this entire thing because it's actually kind of long. So, but yeah, basically the conclusion of this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's read a little bit more. Okay. All she knows is the protected perspective of a child. How could we expect her to be anything but? Women watch the people around them and expect the same outcomes, the same privileges, the same benefits, the same money, the same everything because they don't have the same perspective. They simply cannot fathom what it takes to get what they see. Now, just listen to what this guy is. Think about that. Like this person it's incapable of him. Like he's incapable of understanding that women also not only have to work for the same shit that they want, but in real life, women often have to work harder for the same things that men get. You know, things like glass ceilings in industries, right? Now, the problem with when you say something like that, like a glass ceiling, it's hard to prove that that's like for example, like if you go to a company and there's no female top executives, right? It's hard to prove that the reason for that is because of discrimination, right? But when you start seeing a pattern, when it's like the majority of executives in every company in the country are male, and then the women that also manage to get to that same level make less money than their male counterparts, then it's sort of like it's sort of like when you look at the aggregate, you start seeing patterns. That's the same thing with the gender gap, right? Lots of men in the manosphere like to deny that the like the pay gap, sorry, the pay gap when it comes to genders, right? Lots of men in the manosphere, that's another thing they always rally against. They say that the pay gap doesn't exist and it all comes down to the kind of jobs that women choose, and it comes down to the you know amount of the way that they negotiate their salaries and blah blah blah. And it's kind of bullshit. Like in real life, even women and men who even have high paying jobs, right? um, the man will make more money. And it's like, and it's you see it in every industry across the board. You know, Men get more hours, right? Men usually start sometimes at a higher pay rate. They get raises more often, right? Their raises tend to be more. Is it all due to negotiation? You know, the problem with it is that it's hard to prove. You can't just because it's not like this is more social science, so that's not that easy to determine the cause. Like, was it because of discrimination or was it because of other extenuating factors? Like other things they say, it's because women go and they have children and all this other stuff, blah blah blah. That yeah, maybe, but or maybe they didn't get hired for the job that pays more because of the fact that they have kids. That so it's not easy to determine these things, but we can say that it exists and there's a problem and it should be something that our society should address. You know, so more study needs to be done, right? More safeguards need to be put in. The fact that you can't just like hand wave shit away because you don't think that it's caused by XYZ. You know what I'm saying here? It's like we have to like address what's actually happening and not what you think's happening. So anyway, so yeah, but yeah, getting back to this thing here, it's like this guy can't even understand that women have to work for the shit that they earn, and it's like he's never heard of a single mother before who's got to work two jobs to fucking support her kids. Like he's never heard of that before. Like, and it really I really do think the person who wrote this was like maybe 20, more likely 18 or 19 at the most, maybe of college age, right? And the problem is that this has become sort of like a fucking mantra. Women or children has become like one of the mantras on the fucking manosphere. It's ridiculous, right? Anyway, basically, long story short, this fucking like little cum stain here is saying that women don't have fucking agency, and that we should treat them the same way that we treat children. And lots of bullshit has come from this, right? Basically saying shit like this notion that women are children, like they use it to justify trying to take away voting rights. you know they use it to justify discrimination, essentially, right? And it's definitely worth a read. I mean, I'd read the whole thing, but that literally goes on for like another fucking 1500 words. It's kind of long there, but that's the crux of the story. Moving on. Okay, let's see. What else do we fucking want to talk about here? Yeah, we talked about traditional gender roles. They all really believe in traditional gender roles. The men should make the money and the women should stay home and take care of the kids. Blah 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 blah. This also means that they really hate gay people. They really hate trans people. They kind of see trans men as sort of like and trans men and gay men like as sort of like men who have been I guess hoodwinked by like feminism almost, right? And it just really goes to show because when they say men's rights activists, like they don't really talk about, you know, um, say for example, issues that affect gay men. They don't really give a fuck about that, right? So it's really not about men's rights. It's really about men complaining that they can't get laid. That's definitely a thing. Um, there's a lot of conspiracies running around in men's rights circles. Lots of bullshit about, for example, cultural Marxism and the Frankfurt School, stuff like that. Especially when it comes to feminism, they kind of there's this idea that feminism is just sort of like a back door for like socialism, you know, which is, I mean, yeah, there are lots of socialists in feminist thought, but feminism is not synonymous with socialism, not at all, right? That's not true. But this is how they kind of stereotype it like that. So you'll see lots of like, calling like feminists commies and shit like that all the time, and lots of language to the effect of like feminism is like a subversion to the American values and traditional values and the American way of life, right? Unsurprisingly, a lot of men's rights people tend to be extremely religious as well. And it always kind of got to me, excuse me, burping and shit. It always kind of got to me how, like, this sort of American conservative culture has evolved in this sort of way to where the more religious you are, the more like, you know, more horrid things you tend to support, right? Like the more like is if you're a religious person, you're supposed to be loving and caring. You're supposed to care about your fellow man. You're supposed to give to the poor and like support people's rights, stuff like that. You're supposed to be anti-government, but also do what the government says. I don't know how that shit works, right? Like, lots of different things. And the more religious you are in the United States, like the more likely you are to do the exact opposite of that. The more likely you are to support taking away people's rights. You're more likely you are to support stopping programs you know and it's like, oh, it should all be voluntary. Yeah, I'll give to charity as long as it's voluntary, but then the charities they give to tend to be religious charities. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'll give, like, it counts when you're giving your pastor money so that he can go buy a fucking private jet or whatever, right? Or like hide it, squirrel it away in his bathroom. You guys hear about that, the Joel Osteen thing? This mega church guy in fucking Texas who, like, they found like fucking $400,000 in, like, scrolled away in one of the walls of his bathroom. It's like, I don't know. Thinking Joel Osteen's going to prison pretty soon, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But still, yeah, it just really gets me where it's like the more religious you are, the more likely you are to want to take away people's rights, especially when it comes to women, like, women and minorities. I don't understand that shit. Anyway, so there is a very large overlap with Manosphere stuff and the alt-right in general, which is why I titled this stream alt-right part 5, because it's basically another branch of the alt-right. And all of, because like I said before, racism and misogyny goes hand in hand, right? So a lot of pretty prominent alt-right people overlap with the manosphere. People like Andrew Anglin of the Daily Stormer, is a manosphere guy. Um, fucking Richard Spencer, right? Um, what the hell was that little, the Groiper guy? Nick Fuentes is a Manosphere guy. So yeah, they all sort of overlap with this shit, and you see a lot of the language that originally comes from the Manosphere is used in alt-right circles. Cuck, for example, red pill, you know, stuff like that, blue pill, right? Beta male, shit like that. This is all like this language. It's like interchangeable almost because they're the same people. That's really why. The same people running around with their Nazi flags and swastikas and shit, wearing their fucking stupid like Proud Boy shirts and going to school board meetings and threatening people for like teaching fucking critical race theory and shit. They're the same guys that are like writing these fucking stupid like field tests and like bragging about how they're banging 16 different women at once when in real life they like have never touched a boob since junior high school. Right? So, it's definitely a fucking thing. Let's see. Luigi the Destroyer, thank you for joining. We will read your comments later on. Although I don't think I will like your comments, but I would still read them. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of a sample of what some of these people believe. There's maybe some more typical manosphere bullshit that we should cover. This first idea is that false rape accusations are just as like a problem as actual rape. That's a thing that these idiots believe, and this is also complete total fucking bullshit. Um, in real life, there really is no numbers out there, however, on how many rape accusations tend to be baseless. The FBI estimates about 8%, and that was of 2013. So, if anybody has any actual research on this, if there's any actual numbers, like if somebody's actually done a study on it or codified it or whatever, you know, that's something I'm definitely interested in reading. But it is, and it is a problem. I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen, right? Because it definitely does happen. There are such things as false rape accusations, right? Um, I even made a video myself once about 7 years ago. This is still on my channel about how a coworker kind of threatened that she was going to do this to me if I didn't like back off, right? And I'll kind of recount that story here briefly, but long story short, I was this girl's I was this girl's sort of not really supervisor, but I was sort of like the lead, you know. And at the time, I was doing a software QA for a market research company, right? And so I was supposed to be the lead QA person. And we hired this girl that I worked with before I used to be a game tester. And so she actually worked at the place that I used to work at. So I knew her, you know, and weren't really friends, but I knew who she was. And it was like, oh, okay, you know, got her the job and, you know, didn't work out. She was extremely lazy. You know, she had lots of different problems, wasn't performing right. And I was supposed to be this girl's, you know, lead. So my job is to like, hey, you got to fucking do your job, you know, trying to get her to actually perform. And she kind of dropped a hint, a very, very subtle hint that if I didn't stop telling her what to do, she was going to pull some kind of sexual harassment thing, right? So this happened to me, right? And you know, the thing about it is what I did is I just sort of went, okay, and backed off, right? And I didn't ask her for anything, right? And then when the time came that my boss said I needed to ask her to do something, right? Because I expressed this because I had like my sort of supervisor guy above me who kind of just didn't want to deal with it, right? And so I knew that, you know, the time came where I had to ask her to do something, and I knew that she was going to freak out and give me a load of shit over it. And the way I did it is that you know, I got it in chat. So at the time we used Messenger, right? Like most companies use Slack now. We used Messenger back then. This is how long ago this was. Was it 7 years? Yeah, this was like, no, it was more like, shit, more like 11 years ago. But anyway, it was a long time ago, right? So I got it in a Slack message, you know, or not a Slack message, but a messenger, like, you know, instant message, right? And sure enough, she lost her fucking mind when I asked her to do some work. And but then I got it in a message, and then I took that and I went over to my boss and showed it to her. You know, my boss was also a woman, right? Showed it to her, and this got her kicked off of my team, right? And that's the thing about it. So, you know, and then after, you know, since she wasn't on my team anymore and she didn't have somebody like me to cover for her when she was being lazy, within 6 months, she got herself fired. Right? That's how I handled it. Now, it didn't hit the point in my case where there was not a false rape accusation. It was just more like a bully in my case. It was more like this woman knew that she had the ability to fuck me up in such a way that I would have no defense because in real life it's true. If you know any job you're at, you know, if you get accused of sexual harassment, the place is just going to fire you. Like they will, you know, especially at the time I was like a contractor. It might not be that easy if you're like an employee. They might go through some remediation first or something. But at the time, I was like a contractor, like, so I didn't even actually work for the company. Yeah, they would have just, you know, canned me like that. I would have been gone. So, you know, you have to, you know, this is definitely a thing, and I'm not going to say that false rape accusations don't happen because they do. You know, you hear about them in the news once in a while. You know, a woman accuses a man of rape, blah blah blah, and then they find out, you know, there's a recording or whatever. The thing about it is that is it really as common as actual rape? Right? Is it really like the way that they put it? You would, if you were to listen to the Manosphere, you would hear them say that, well, the majority of rape accusations are actually false, which is there's no evidence of that. That's not, you know, that's a fantasy. That's bullshit, right? In real life, you know, it's somewhere around 1 in 20 women will at some point in their life report either being raped or an attempted rape, right? It's kind of a lot, So yeah, at some point, like, it used to be so bad that at one point every what I think it was something like every 63 seconds in the United States, a woman was getting raped, like in the late 70s. Like, surprisingly, the actual number of reported rapes in the United States has gone down. Like, it used to be way higher, like in the 70s, it was like extremely high, right? So, but that's kind of followed the same general trend. Like, violent crime in general has gone down since, the 70s and 80s. So that's no surprise. But still, 1 in 20, kind of a lot, wouldn't you say? So are really all of them, like, false? Like, not really. So I don't know. Like, the estimate from the FBI, like I said before, was 8%. That sounds about right. Sounds about right. So that means, that still equates to, millions upon millions upon millions of actual rape accusations not being false, right? So yeah, I mean, like everything, it's the thing. That's the thing when it comes to manosphere stuff, right? A lot of these things that these guys talk about are actual real problems, you know, but it's the way that they address it, the way that their solutions for it is where the problem lies. It's where they're wrong. It's like, yes, there is such a thing as false rape accusations, but their solution is just ignore all the real ones. Like, no, no, how do you address that? How do you address false rape accusations? I don't know. Maybe you put in protocols to make sure that, you do extensive investigations and stuff like that. Maybe you don't automatically assume the man's guilt. That's another thing. It's like they complain about that. I could agree with that. Maybe like men, like for example, when you call a domestic violence thing in and the police show up, they will automatically put the man in the police car and like separate him from the woman and shit like that. And it's sort of like a presumption of guilt. I could agree with that. Maybe that's going a little too far. Maybe you shouldn't do that unless there's some evidence. Like, does the woman have bruises on her face, some shit like that, or whatever. Or maybe you don't have to put them in the police car. Maybe you just have to separate them away. Maybe it doesn't have to, like, there shouldn't be a presumption of guilt is what I'm trying to say. I can agree with things like that. These are all things that should be debated, right? But that's not the way that the Manosphere goes about it. They want to basically undo the protections that women have fought for, right? That's what they want to do. And it's like, no, man, we're not going to undo shit. We're not going to undo the progress that we've made, the little progress that has been made in these areas. We're not going to do that. So that's why I can't get on board with this shit, right? Anyway, let's see. Another another myth that these guys like to complain about is this idea that men get raped just as much as women do. That's simply not true, right? Now, here's the thing though, it is a problem. Men do get raped, right? There is such a thing as male rape, right? By women, of course, but the vast majority of men who get raped are actually report being raped by other men. That's the big difference. It's like, you know what I mean? So it's not so much like the, gangs of women going around and gang raping men and shit. That's not really a thing that's happening. It's more of, men get raped and then they complain that nobody takes it seriously, right? Which I can understand that. The problem with this is that, well, it's because men tend to not report getting raped, right? So when you compare, for example, the number of women who get raped, right? It's somewhere around 1 in 20 women, like I said before. This is from the FBI, right? The same report that gave us that number says 1 in 72 men report getting raped at some point in their life, right? Now, is it because men simply are not raped as much, or is it because they're not reporting it? It's probably a combination of both, right? But, that's the thing. It's like the same thing that you tell women, like, hey, you got to report it. So if it happens, you got to report it. You have to, like, you can't let it go. You gotta say something. You gotta do something about it. And Why don't men report it as much? Because, that number's probably higher, right? Um, why don't men report it as much? Well, the reason why is because that's a function of toxic masculinity, right? It's a function of patriarchy. This idea that if you're a man and you get raped, and then that somehow makes you less of a man, that somehow makes you, first off, so that it somehow makes you gay. That's a thing that you hear a lot too, right? That's a fear, like, homophobia. This is also a function of patriarchy, right? Function of toxic masculinity. This idea that, you got raped, you got taken advantage of. People are gonna, and the shame that comes with it. It's like, no, you shouldn't be ashamed of ever be ashamed of being a victim, no matter what fucking happens. Because that's literally, being a victim literally is something that is not your fault, and shouldn't be ashamed for things that are beyond your control, especially when somebody takes advantage of you, right? The guy that did it to you is the one that needs to feel the shame, right? So but that's definitely a problem. It's probably higher, but we have no way of knowing. We have no way of knowing if the number of actual male victims of rape is higher than what's reported, unfortunately. So, yeah, the thing is, does the manosphere actually want to do anything about this? No. Do they have rape shelters for men? No, right? That's another thing they talk about. They talk about, like, how women can, there's like rape shelters for women and stuff like that, and there aren't any for men. Go start some, you know? These fucking guys are making millions of dollars, on social media being fucking influencers and shit, right? On their YouTube channels, on their dumbass fucking blogs, and giving TED Talks and all this other crap, like they're making millions of fucking dollars. Like, how many like men's like rape shelters has fucking Rolo Tomasi opened? Zero, right? Tell them to put their money where their mouth is. If it's such a big fucking problem, do something about it. If you're really an activist and not a grifter, do something about it. But they don't actually do something about it because it's not really activism. It's basically just like outrage posting to piss off fucking, like, I don't know, men who can't get laid. That's what's really going on here, right? Anyway, but yeah, getting more on the male victims of rape, right? Most men who get raped, who report being raped, actually say that they are raped by other men, right? But, you know, occasionally they do say that they were made to penetrate, um, you know, instead of being penetrated themselves, right? And that comes to about 1 in 21, 4.8% of men say they've been made to penetrate someone else. So that's made to penetrate, but that still doesn't mean that if they're like, made to penetrate by a woman or a man. I really couldn't find any statistics on that. Right. I could find that the majority of them are, they're victims of rapes by other men. Right. And this also includes like a large number of gay and trans men, right? Um, also report when they get raped, they're the victims of other men raping them, which is like, I don't understand how that shit works. It's like you hate gay people, you hate trans people, but you have no problem having sex with them. I never understood that. Um, let's see here. Moving on. Um, what else? What else? What else? What else? So yeah, here's another slightly a subject where they might actually have a little bit of merit is in divorce, right? Lots of people in the manosphere complain about divorce. They complain that, divorce courts are unfair, that women always will get out ahead. They get more property. They automatically get the custody of the children, even when they're like crazy or insane or drug addicts or something. And that's true. This is definitely true. This is one area where, the manosphere might actually have an actual leg to stand on, right? There are reasons, of course, why traditionally women have gotten more when a marriage is ended, right? And it is because, once again, of patriarchy. That's the reason, right? So, in the past, women were very much usually the homemakers. They were usually the ones that didn't have marketable skills. This is like when divorce became first became acceptable socially. This is in like the 1950s and stuff. The vast majority of women didn't have careers. They were stay-at-home moms, right? Which is because of the time, so they didn't go to college, shit like that. And this is why when they would get divorced, judges would give them more of the property because when you get divorced, it's not just about equality, it's also about maintaining as much of a continuance of quality of life before and after the divorce, right? So that's kind of what, that all of that was sort of taken into account. Well, that isn't really like that so much anymore. Women tend to actually go into higher education more often than men. We'll talk about that in a minute, right? And women are capable of making, even though women don't make as much money as men, they don't. But still, it's not as cut and dry as it used to be, right? And this has really changed a lot in recent decades. So there are a very large number of states where they start with what's called the 50-50 presumption, right? The idea that we're going to split all of the assets, all of the money, the house, the cars, whatever. We're going to split all that 50-50, right? And in a couple of states, that's actually been codified into law. This is where they begin with this assumption that everything is going to be divided equally. Arkansas, Indiana, New Hampshire, California, New Mexico, Louisiana, right? These are all states where the 50-50 presumption is codified into law. That's where they got to start. And then, depending on circumstances, like say if if the children go to one or the other, then maybe like they'll make adjustments to that, right? Lots of other states use it as a starting point and then diverge from it. So Indiana, Nevada, North Carolina, Oregon, West Virginia, Illinois, and about seven others, right? They all sort of start from that. So it's not exactly the way it was back in the day. It's not like you automatically lose your house, your car, your kids, everything, and then you also have to pay alimony and all of this other shit. Not exactly like that anymore, right? Although to say that it's been solved that this is not a problem is definitely not true. Women are most likely the wife is going to get more, when it comes to things like, especially if she wasn't making as much money as you make, stuff like that, you know. Um, Especially if there's children involved, you're going to have to pay child support, that kind of thing, but it's a little more equitable nowadays. It might not be like the way it was in the past where they just automatically gave the child to the wife or whatever. And really the reason why they did that was because of patriarchy. Really, the reason they did that is because traditionally women were seen as you know, the better caregiver, and the idea was that raising children was the best thing that a woman could aspire to in her life. And this was sort of ingrained in our society back then. And that's why women, and even today, that still sort of peppers a lot of people's judgment. Just because it's like 2021 doesn't mean that everybody's like fucking, you know, enlightened, right? Plenty of even women out there believe this exact same thing. There are plenty of women out there who are part of, um, the traditional values crowd who believe this exact same thing, that your entire existence as a woman revolves around fucking raising kids. So yeah, and that's what really gets me about it is a lot of these MRM people, a lot of people in the manosphere, the incel types, the Mgtow people, this is what they want. This is what they want. They want a wife that stays home and takes care of kids. They want to be the breadwinner. Right. They want to be because they want to be the head of the household, right? They want their wife to just, be a homemaker and stay home and fucking raise children, shit like that. And then they bitch and moan and complain that when they get divorced because they were like, I don't know, flirting with a waitress right in front of their fucking wife, like in that fucking, or something like that. Like when they were trying to like, apply red pill philosophy shit to their marriage and their wife divorces them because she's not going to be like a fucking doormat, Then they complain that, oh, well, I got to pay alimony and shit like that. It's like, well, yeah, you do because you married someone with no fucking skills or whatever because you wanted a stay-at-home wife. You can't have both. Do you want a stay-at-home wife or do you want like free, like, fair divorce like proceedings, right? One or the other. So that's what I don't. It's bullshit, right? Let's see, 12:45. Let's go a little longer here. Some other stuff. Another one that they definitely that men do have, however. Oh wait, actually, we already talked about that. We already talked about disparities in sentencing. Yeah, that's another one. Disparities in sentencing is where the men's rights people have a actually do have a point, but we already talked about that one. Um, Here's one: male expendability. This is a big thing that the men's rights people always talk about. So what the fuck do you mean like male expendable? Like what the fuck even is that? So it's this idea that women are like society is set up to protect women in ways that men are not, right? So like for example, you'll have more say study like women's studies, stuff like that in schools. You'll have like for example, if a boat's sinking, the women and children first thing, right? And that's kind of, not really the truth. Not really. The women and children first thing comes from I got it written down here. Let me see if I can find it. It comes from what's called the Birkenhead drill, right? And that was named after a ship that sank in 1852, and it was a British, the HMS Birkenhead, right? And that's where the women and children first to the lifeboats things comes from, right? The thing about that is that particular ship was a troop carrier, so every person on it was part of the armed forces, right? So there were exactly 7 women and 13 children on the boat, and they evacuated them first because they were civilians, right? So in a war, if you're an enlisted person, if you're a soldier, whether that means you're a sailor or a, seaman or, a marine or whatever the fuck these people were, you kind of what the risks are, and it's your duty to protect the civilians first in any engagement. That should be, your duty is to make sure that these people, the civilians, get out alive, right? That they're not caught in the crossfire, shit like that. That they don't get, sunk into a ship in the middle of a war or whatever, right? You notice that nobody complains about letting the children go first, but anyway, so that's why these women went out first, right? The other thing about that is that, this is also not something that happens anymore very much. Nowadays the protocol is usually they allow, when say there's a building on fire or say there's, some place you got to evacuate or like, a ship sinking, whatever, right? They usually get the injured people out, disabled people, injured people, right? Then they'll be followed by like say the elderly, you know, um, and then children, right? So those are the people that actually get like evacuated first nowadays, right? Not so much, and also pregnant women will get evacuated first, not ahead of like regular ordinary women. Pregnant women get like, and it's because, they're about to have a child. So it's like basically, so the whole women and children first thing is it's not really a thing anymore, right? But here's the other thing about that, because you will, you know, like this also is another function of patriarchy, right? Like, why would you, evacuate the women and children first, right? Like, if you were to ask me, like, if I was on a boat and I was sinking and the boat was sinking, right? And it was like there's one space left on the lifeboat and it's me and my wife, who gets to go? I'd insist that my wife goes on the boat, right? I would do this today, right? Why would I do this? Right? Because of, well, to be honest, because of patriarchy, right? Because it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I was a coward and allowed my wife to drown to death when there was a space on that boat, and she probably wouldn't want to go. She'd probably be like, "No, you got to come with me. Hang on the side, whatever." Right? Something like that. And I'd probably try to do that. I'd probably just like, I don't know, go get a piece of wood and try to hang on to it or some shit. But still, this is why. Now, why is that? Why is that? Because I am a product of Western society where it's worse to survive and be considered a coward than it is to live, right? And the thing is, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Like I understand that this is socioeconomic programming. Well, not socioeconomic, but this is a society, programming you. This is like your culture influencing your decision and all this other stuff. And that, looked at from objective, like an objective viewpoint, there really is no reason why one person should survive over another person. Not really. But I accept that 100%. And I would make that choice every time, right? And I'm sure my wife would probably want to make the same choice too. If it was up to her who gets to live and who gets to die, I'm sure she would probably want me to live and would choose to sacrifice herself as well. That's kind of what it comes down to. So basically, what I'm saying, the reason why, you know, men allow their wives and their girlfriends and their mothers and stuff to survive when there's a disaster is because that's what our culture has determined. And I don't think that particular aspect is actually a negative thing. I think that's maybe one of the positive things from a male dominated culture, the idea that people who are, vulnerable and need to be protected, right? I see no contradiction with that whatsoever with feminism, with the aims of third wave feminism whatsoever. I see no contradiction there whatsoever. I think that's actually a good thing. Right. Not everything is bad. Not every aspect of patriarchy is bad. Some of it's actually not, that's actually something that I think is beneficial to society. The idea that, you know, the selflessness of allowing someone else to go first, right? Doesn't that person who goes first doesn't always have to be exclusively female though. But anyway. Let's see what else we want to talk about. We talked about male expendability. There was also some bullshit about like evolutionary fucking biology or some shit, and women are more valuable because they can have children, blah blah blah. That's all bullshit. Like evolutionary like psychology is bullshit. I don't know if you guys have ever, like it's all just made up. They're just made up theories that they have no actual like proof about one way or the other. And it's interesting shit to think about. Like, oh, maybe this is why our society thinks about a certain way because evolutionary, like from an evolutionary standpoint, women are more valuable to society than men. Blah blah blah. Who bullshit? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Can we actually prove any of that stuff? No. So I think it's a load of fucking crap, and I'm not even going to comment on it. Let's see. There was some other stuff here. There's some shit about circumcision. There was some stuff about popular media emphasizing female protagonists in video games and movies and stuff. Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, and that's a whole. We could probably spend an entire video just on like anti-SJWs and all that shit. Maybe we'll get to some of that next time. But anyway, why are we talking about this? Why am I talking about all this stuff? Why am I bringing up, the men's rights stuff? Well, it's very much because toxic masculinity is one of, I think, the biggest sort of causes of societal problems that we have, right? A lot of, a lot of the crime, and stuff like that we have, the rape and assaults and shit like that, a lot of that kind of stems from toxic masculinity. A lot of, you know, um, the reason why people turn to crime for fun, you know what I mean? Like, there is a large, there are people, of course, who turn to crime because they have no other option, right? Because they're poor and they can't get jobs, whatever, and they're forced into it. There is also a lot of people who engage in criminal activity because it's fun. People doing shit like shooting guns off into the air and randomly vandalizing shit, and, you know, getting blitzed out of their minds on fucking crack and going out and beating people up, whatever. You know, there is a lot of just that sort of random hooliganism, you know, um, and violence that comes from just, which really isn't a factor of poverty, you know. This is why white kids in the suburbs will get involved in drug dealing, for example. You know, they're not poor, right? I know everybody out there, if you live in a city, you've encountered the middle class white boy wannabe drug dealer who actually may get involved in this shit for real and then realize how fucking like how bad it really actually is and how he fucked himself up. Like, I'm sure you've encountered this person before. I have many times, right? And I always kind of wondered, like, why are you dealing drugs if you're like, like you're not poor, you have money, you're capable of getting a job, your parents have money, shit like that. And it's mainly because it's fun. It's fun, and it has to do with toxic masculinity, toxic male culture. This, you know, that's a big part of it, right? Big part of why men make stupid fucking decisions, right? It's a big part of, like we were saying, why men, when they get raped, they don't report it. Why men tend to get sick, and when they get sick, they tend to not go to the doctor, because of toxic masculinity until it's too late, and so they end up dying of heart attacks and strokes and shit, way more than women do. Because when women get sick, they go to the doctor. Men don't. They equate being sick with weakness. Reminds me a lot. Like, did you ever hear a little while back, about 2 years ago, there was this story in the news about how Donald Trump um, kicked Mick Mulvaney out of a meeting. Mick Mulvaney was his secretary of like staff or whatever. Like, I can't remember the actual title that he had. Um, and there was a recording of it, and basically Mick Mulvaney coughed slightly, and then Trump kicked him out of the meeting. So if you're gonna cough, get out of here. Why? Why did he do that? Because sickness, to a lot of men, sickness or any signs of sickness is seen as weakness, right? And so, yeah, and it's sort of so men won't go and they won't go to the doctor. It's like, I'm fine, it doesn't hurt. How many times have you heard that shit? It's so bad, like that happens so often that it's almost like a stereotype, you know? The guy who doesn't want to go to the doctor because it's like, I can handle it, whatever. It's like you see that shit in movies and shit, and it's because it's true, because there's like, you know, it's part of male toxic fucking masculine culture, right? We're just gonna kind of do an outline of this here. Put some big evil looking spines on his shoulders and stuff, right? So why does that happen? Because of this, because of male toxic masculinity. Men are more homeless. There are more homeless men than women. You know, Men often sleep on the streets more than women. Why? Because they don't want to call for help. Because it's a sign of weakness if you ask somebody for help, right? Because they got pride because of toxic male masculinity, right? This is all functions of patriarchy. If any of you out there are wondering what actual real life effects of, like when feminists talk about patriarchy and shit all the time, this is what they mean. You know, the idea that it's like, why is it? So there's plenty of, women will go ask for help, and they'll go stay at a friend's house, or they'll fucking go to a shelter, shit like that. Men won't do it. They'll go sleep in front of a fucking, Taco Bell or something in the rain or whatever. At least I got my pride. I ain't gonna ask for help. So that's why a lot of these problems would be, you know, alleviated if men would just ask for help. If they would ask for help, if they would stop trying to be so fucking tough all the time, right? If they would stop, like how many guys have you known in your life that just go from 0 to 60 in like fucking 2 seconds flat? The minute somebody looks at them the wrong way, they're ready to kick some ass, right? You know, the nanosecond somebody like gets in their way or pisses them off, they just go into fucking super rage mode, right? How many guys? A lot. I've known a lot of men like that, you know. shit, my father was like that. Right? Like, just, had that, and maybe that's what is that? Is that a defense mechanism? Maybe that's the result of growing up in a rough place. I don't know. Maybe that's like, if you grow up in a rough place, and if you're not aggressive, then you get taken advantage of. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe I don't have that perspective because my childhood was relatively safe, and I didn't grow up in the ghetto. Right? So I can't talk like that. But how many people do you know that have that problem? And it doesn't go well for them, does it? When you're super hyper aggressive, when you're ready to just throw down on a no, on a moment's fucking notice, you end up getting yourself in trouble, more often than not, right? So, yeah, this is why. This is why I'm talking out about this, right? And about that, and also because of the fact that it's very prevalent amongst alt-right circles. Like I said before, you know, all the stuff goes hand in hand. Misogyny goes hand in hand with racism, right? A lot of the same terminology and theories and fucking, like, shit like that comes out of the manosphere gets applied to, in racist circles and in alt-right circles, when they talk about race and IQ and shit like that, you know, it's all the same people making up like just one big fucking shit sandwich of hate. And this is why we should stand against it. And the last reason is because we should, make an effort to see when us ourselves are being influenced by this stuff, right? That's the other thing about this kind of talk. It has a way of sort of infiltrating its way into society at large, especially among young people. You know, like when it comes to slang, things like "cuck." You know, that's entered the normal lexicon of ordinary American slang. You know, based is another one. All the kids say based now when they want to compliment something. That came out of fucking the alt right. It came out of the manosphere. You know, based is like, so even this shit happens, like, or even like when you do something like when you say call somebody a beta male or an alpha male, or if you grade a woman on a scale of 1 to 10. That was a thing. I remember that even like back when I was in fucking, like, grade school. People used to say shit like that. Oh, this girl's a perfect 10, right? I mean, that's something that's been going back for fucking decades. This is how this shit can sort of infiltrate our societies there, and influence the way people think without them even really knowing. You know what I mean? And it's important. It's important for us to identify when that's happening so that we can protect ourselves from it, you know. Anyway, there's way more here, but maybe we'll make more videos about it. I most likely will make a video about incels for sure, because there's like tons and tons of shit about incels. Let's see. Let's read some of the comments that we got from you guys for a few minutes, and then we'll get going. Let's see. Adversary Fanning got rid of your COVID. Great to hear, man. I hope it wasn't too bad for you. Um, I've been hearing a lot, like apparently the Omicron is a lot like less, like serious. Like, although here's the thing is that like the number of hospitalizations are way up. Apparently, if you're vaccinated, then Omicron apparently is a lot less serious. So I don't know. I mean, hopefully, I hope it wasn't too bad for you, man. But glad to hear that you're alive. Let's see. Area Hope. Exactly. I hate it. Why don't they just date each other and leave us women alone? Yes. Well, yeah. Um, one would hope, right? Let's see. Moving on. Cody Cars. These Manosphere groups just want to have more white babies born. Yes, there's a lot of overlap with like the white genocide types and like the alt-right types when it comes to the Manosphere for sure. Um, Area hope. I will always drive my car, never get in a car with a man. You can just begin to date. If he's rude, end all contact immediately. See, that's a thing that, like me as a male, right? I don't really have that fear. Like I've never been in a car with a woman or been alone with a woman and thought to myself that this woman might beat the shit out of me or kill me. Like that's just something that just doesn't, and the thing is I know it's not the other way around. And I've even sort of like you can kind of see sometimes when like a girl's afraid of you. It's like, okay, you got nothing to fear, right? Like I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm just, you know, that's happened more than once in my life where I just and then suddenly I get super uncomfortable and I just sort of like make sure to try to put some distance between the two of us because it's like, dude, I'm not trying to do shit, like just relax. Like so I can, I've never had that fear of myself. I've never been afraid of a woman. I've been afraid of other men doing shit like that. Maybe like especially when I was a kid or something, other guys like wanting to like fuck me up or kick my ass or like, potentially do bad things to me. But never in my life have I ever been afraid of a woman doing it. And that's just something that, we got to remember when you interact with the opposite sex is, got to keep these things in mind. She could be afraid of you for reasons that you just don't comprehend. So, me myself personally always try to be cognizant of that and never put someone in a position where they would feel like afraid of me, I don't like that. I don't like the idea of people like being like afraid, like intimidating. I'm like the most unintimidating person you would ever meet in my life, So when it does happen, because it actually does happen occasionally, like I'll run across someone who's afraid of me and it's very unsettling. It's like, dude, I'm not gonna fucking like the last person you should be afraid of. Anyway, let's see. 1911 greater than all. Wait, are we seriously examining a fantasy written down in order to try to put down toxic masculinity? It is a fantasy work of fiction. Jesus. I think you're referring to the field report, right? Well, the thing about the field reports is that we know they're fantasies, but they are written as if they're actually real. And yeah, at some point you can kind of do that, like, well, at what, like, there is a little bit of that pose law going on in there, like, well, okay, obviously some of these are bullshit, but I don't know, man. There's like an entire, well, I don't know if the subreddits are still around, but there used to be entire subreddits of just people posting these field reports, taking them 100% seriously. I know there's other websites where people do this, other like forums and stuff where people post this shit, and they think the shit's real. I mean, the fact that like it's obvious bullshit doesn't seem to make much sense. So I don't know. I mean, I tend to believe people when they say things. And here's the thing about it. It's bullshit, but they want it to like they're presenting it as if it actually happened. And a lot of the times you'll see on these sorts of field report type things, like at the end they'll ask for advice about how they could have done it better. Then when you read through the comments, people are discussing like XYZ, oh, he should have done this, should have done that, whatever. So it's yeah, like it's definitely an insight into the mentality that these people have, right? So I don't know. I mean, it's not like you can just discount like when you have entire websites with thousands and thousands and thousands of these types of posts, you can't just discount it all as bullshit. You know, like maybe yeah, like maybe the actual thing they wrote is not real, but the shit they believe is definitely coming through on these posts here, right? They definitely do believe this stuff, and that's why I think it's relevant to examine. Um, let's see, judge fantasy. Yeah, read some of the female written romance novels. Fantasy and ridiculous. See, that's the thing. 1911, right? Is that when you write a romance novel, you know it's fake. You're not asking people on life advice of your romance novel like people will do with this. They're not presenting, romance novels are not being presented as real life, and like these things are. So, let's see, Pony Throat. That's a very interesting name. What are your thoughts on the bioethical premise that states that the amount of incel violence in society could be reduced if they only made equine fleshlights, which felt more like the real thing? Oh my god, that is my new favorite comment. Um, I am 100% for that. I think if we had a company that made My Little Pony fleshlights, then yeah, that would do a lot to cut down on the school shooting incels for sure. I think you're onto something there, Pony Throat. You know, I think you've got a good business model going. Oh my God, isn't there a word for that? I think it's what, clopping, right? Isn't that where people are like sexually attracted to fucking horses? Clopping? I don't know. I don't want to think about that. Moving on. Let's see. Thoughts on yogurt males? I don't know what a yogurt male is. Let me see. Let me take a look at that. Yogurt males. A yogurt male, Urban Dictionary. A more sophisticated and evolved version of an alpha male who grooms children on the day. Oh, grooms children. Yikes. Um, wow. I think that that actually is a big problem. Also, when it comes to like in the manosphere, like you have an entire sub segment of these sort of incel types that are like essentially like you just like this yogurt male thing just described, sort of child predators. You know what I mean? That's a serious problem. A lot of talk about the age of consent and shit like that. I did an entire stream actually on the alt right and the age of consent, so I don't want to repeat too much of what we said there. But yeah, that's definitely a problem. So I don't know. I didn't know what that term was, yogurt male. So thanks. My life is now worse off for it. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. Lewis the Hedgehog. Hey, didn't see you there. Let's see. Let's move on. Okay, here's one. 1911. Traditional families is the solution for societal decay. All the crap you see that is negative in regards to society is best addressed with those core values being followed. Sources of crime act. Mm, I'm not so sure that's the best solution. It is one solution, maybe. It is true that if everybody lived in a traditional society, then problems like that would go down in a traditional family. But it's sort of like if everybody lived the exact same way, then yes, problems all go down in your society. If everybody, like, that's definitely a true thing. The problem is that, traditional families are kind of bullshit because there have never actually been, like, what exactly is a traditional family? There never really has actually been traditional families. Like what do you mean by that? One man, one woman, mother, father? Like, why is that so different than, two men or two women, right? Then you can start getting into other arguments too. Well, traditional family in Afghanistan means one man and six women. Why is that different, right? Like, so yeah, like I guess what I mean, do you mean like traditional family values? Is that more what you're talking about? Like two parents, right? One stays home, one works, one's take care of the kids. Well, why does it have to be the woman that stays home and takes care of the kids, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure you've met plenty of women who make very crappy mothers, right? That's definitely a thing. It's like, Why is a woman automatically the better caregiver? You know, no, there's plenty of men out there who are perfectly capable of being, a stay-at-home father. Why is that different, right? Why? Men can do dishes, men can cook, men can fucking clean stuff. Are you saying what are you saying there's like a biological like fucking reason why a man can't make a pot roast or some shit? Like that also is a function of patriarchy. This idea that women are just automatically caregivers and that they're just better at it, like biologically better at it. It's like that's not true at all, man. Like, so why does it make a difference if the woman goes out and works and the man stays home? Why does that fucking matter? And then, well, why does it matter if there's two men and one works and one stays home? What's the difference there? Like what? Like man can't change a diaper, man can't vacuum a floor, something like that. Like doesn't it doesn't make any sense. It's like it would only work that way. Like it would only be better for society that way if every person in your society lived like that, right? But it really has never actually been like that ever. Like there's always been single parents, always, forever. There's always been, multiple like, families with same-sex parents. They just weren't actually married before in the past, and it was just sort of kept on the down low, you know. But even in the past, there were always, women that lived with each other, men that lived with each other, and sometimes they'd have children or whatever, and it was just kept secret, you know. That doesn't mean that, there really is no evidence that, you know, children from same-sex parents or whatever go on to commit more crime or go on to become like more, depressed or any shit like that. There is evidence of single parents where kids might get a little fucked up. Especially young boys who don't have father figures, that kind of thing. So I can understand that, but at the same time, it's like that goes both ways, right? There's also evidence that single men who raise families also have trouble. And the reason why, right, is because there's only one. There's only one parent to do all the shit that needs to be done when you have your kid, and when you have two parents, it's division of labor and it can be easier. But there's no reason to say that, I mean, it's not a universal thing. There are plenty of single parents out there that do a great job raising their kids and their children come out and they're not all fucked up and they're not criminals, right? I mean, that's definitely true too. And there's no evidence that says that, it matters if the parents have to be like, like they can't be the same sex. And so it's not really, I don't see it. There's just no evidence for it. You know what I mean? Like, not really. Like, there's no evidence that you can actually draw a direct causation between, say, for example, you know, um, same-sex parents and crimes. That's not a thing, right? Or divorce and crimes. That's another thing, right? Like, or even like, there's not really much of a. I mean, I think there was a study about single parents and child delinquency. I'll have to look that up, but I think I do remember seeing a study about, yeah, like if you just have like a single parent, but it didn't say whether it was like, a single mother or a single father was better or worse. It just said having one parent in the home. And I can understand that because there's increased stressors on the single parent. They have to raise the kids and work and do all the household shit. And it's like very few people can juggle all that stuff, especially the younger your children are, the harder it is, you know. But no, I don't buy the fact that it's like traditional families are better for society. And I don't buy that at all because we've never actually had any time ever where it was always like that. I mean, not in modern times, maybe like in the fucking 1600s or some shit. I don't know. Let's see what else. Uh, diaper change, pony throat. Changing a diaper every day is hardly in the same ballpark as working down a coal mine for minimum wage for 12 hours in a job that slowly kills you. Well, yeah, that's true. Um, but there are no laws against women being coal miners, right? I mean, I guess the point was is that like according to that little diatribe that we were reading that women don't do the dirty jobs. Well, is it because of what? Because they don't take those sorts of jobs? Like being a coal miner kind of sucks to begin with, right? Now, is it sort of like, I guess, just being I mean, what do you mean by like dirty, risky jobs, right? Would the company hire a female coal miner? That's another thing too. Like, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make it. It's not true. Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, plenty of women do plenty of shitty jobs. Like, what do you mean by dirty exactly or risky? Like or shitty jobs. There's plenty of really crappy shitty jobs out there that women do all the time. Cleaning up garbage, cleaning toilets, wiping people's asses. You know, being caregivers in hostels and like fucking sponge bathing like old people and wiping poop out of their ass cracks and stuff like that, right? And just or just shitty jobs in general, working in restaurants or fucking in retail or you know et cetera, where you have to like put up with assholes constantly. That's stuff women do all the time. So it's like, I mean, yeah, I guess if you have like, I guess that's an example there, coal miner. I didn't think about that example. Right? But, and sure, I'm sure there are other jobs where they're male dominated as well, things like fucking, lobster fisher or some shit. Like what's that? Like the most dangerous job is like Alaskan fucking crab fisher or something. Like I'm sure those are all men that do that, but you know, I just the premise that women don't, as in our society as a whole, like in the aggregate, that women don't have to work is just total bullshit. They do work. They obviously fucking work. And they always have. They always have worked and always have had to hustle like more even so than men were. And the more professional and the more high paid the job is, the harder they got to work for the same fucking outcome. That, it's no mistake that you know, men are allowed to fail upwards, right? And more often than not, depending on their like social class. That's completely 100% true. So, you know, things like glass ceilings in a company is definitely a real fucking thing. Whether this is like, it's just, like I said before, it's not easy to prove that it's due to discrimination. Some of it is. That's the thing. There's like you can't like, some of it definitely is due to discrimination. Some of it may be because of the women didn't fucking negotiate, blah blah blah, or maybe she didn't take the higher paying job, blah blah blah. Yeah, maybe those things contribute to it, but discrimination also contributes a lot to it as well. So anyway, Pony Throat. Two countries have a female draft: Israel, North Korea. Um, One is a small, paranoid, militaristic dictatorship with access to nuclear weapons, which constantly threatens its neighbors, and the other is North Korea. Yeah, absolutely true. Let's see. 1911. I think if females can match male requirements, then fine, go ahead. I just don't think making a separate standard just to meet some dumb PC quota is prudent. Yeah, and that's the thing. I absolutely agree there too. Like for example, talking about women in combat or women in being firefighters. That's another one that I always try to go back to because, you can't be like a fat, out of shape firefighter. You know, you have to be in shape. There's fucking, you know, physical requirements to that. You have to be able to like lift heavy stuff and drag people out of buildings and carry up fire hoses and run up a flight of stairs and all this other shit. And that's the thing about it is like, well, yeah, if she can meet those requirements, do it. And I agree 100%. It's like, don't lower the requirements. The requirements should be the same no matter who you are. And if you can hit it, then it's yours. Take it. But that's not how it is in real life. In real life, there's laws against it. No women in combat. Why? I don't know. I think that's kind of dumb, right? Like, I think if you're stupid enough to join the army and you want to go fight in a war, then fucking it should be your right in order for them the government should accommodate that, right? I'm a big believer in voluntary service. you know I'm a big believer in the fact that if you want to get a job someplace, Like if you want, especially for the government, if you want to work for the government and like let's say you have one arm, right? And you want to work, they should be able to come up with a job that requires you to pull one lever with your one arm. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big believer in the idea that there's a job out there for everybody. And there's always, especially when it comes to public service, there's a way that every single person can contribute, you know, and it should be imperative on the government in order to facilitate that service, right? Like if I were like, for example, if I were to like become the president tomorrow, that would be one of my proposals. I would say I want a Department of Public Service, and this would be a department that matches people with jobs. And maybe it's not the best job in the world, maybe it's not the job in your chosen career, but it's a job and it's there if you want it. And I think a lot of people that are desperate and need work would fucking take it if it's a job that they could do and it didn't require them moving halfway across the country or some shit. I think they would take it. And even if it just ended up being a temporary thing or whatever, I don't know. I really think that's like, we could match people with like, you know, because I'm talking about like stuff to keep people from being homeless is what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be a good idea and that would be a good use of tax dollars. So, anyway, guys, there's a lot more comments here. Thank you guys all. Let me see here. Oh, Luigi the Destroyer doesn't seem to have a lot of stuff, very positive things to say about the stream here. But you know what? I will read all the rest of these later. I got to get going, and we were already over by half an hour. So thank you guys all for joining, though. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Um, Next stream will be on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. And we're going to be talking about inflation and the economy, as suggested by Cody Course. That will be our next subject. Um, if we don't do it on Wednesday, for sure it'll be on Saturday, but I'm going to shoot for Wednesday. So let me see here. Let me just get ready to do my ending speeches and stuff like that. Let's see. Let's see. Come. Hang on, guys. Give me 1 second. I just want to go and. Oh, I got some sales. Oh, sweet. Anyway, so if you guys like what I do and you want to support me, you know, monetarily, if you want to give me money for stuff that I'm doing, you can buy something from my SD shop. Okay, let me just put this down in the chat. I sell prints and stuff like that. A lot of these are prints that we did during the stream. Here's one that we did actually during the stream. We streamed drawing this, you know. So, yeah, if you like what I do and you want to give me money, please consider buying something on my SD shop. If you want to see more of my artwork, you can check me out on DeviantArt. Right, I got comics up here. I got all kinds of stuff. We did this during a stream too on Halloween. This pumpkin head dude. So these are where all the artwork ends up. Check me out there. I also have a web comic. It's got ninjas and monsters and people getting punched in the face and stuff like that. So check me out, hawanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. And I have another YouTube channel called UCD Videos where I do toy reviews and game reviews. Mainly a lot of toy reviews recently, but I also have gaming streams and stuff like that. So if you want to see me do some non-political content, please check me out there. So you guys are great. Thank you all so much. And like I said, next stream is going to be Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will see you all there. Thanks a lot, guys.